In 1978, the most watched sporting event on Earth took place inside a country running secret torture centers. A military dictatorship used football's greatest prize to legitimize mass murder. Players celebrated on pitches while prisoners screamed beneath the stadiums. This is the story football spent decades pretending did not happen. The country that should never have hosted it. On March 24, 1976, a military coup overthrew the democratically elected government of Argentina. General Jorge Rafael Videla and the armed forces junta seized power and immediately launched a systematic campaign of state terror against anyone the regime identified as politically inconvenient. What followed was one of the most documented campaigns of state-sponsored disappearance, torture, and murder in 20th century Latin American history. The Dirty War saw between 10,000 and 30,000 Argentine citizens disappeared by the state, abducted from homes, workplaces, and universities, taken to clandestine detention centers, tortured, murdered, their bodies disposed of in ways designed to ensure families would never find them. Argentina had been awarded the 1978 World Cup before the coup. FIFA had made that decision in 1966 under entirely different political circumstances. When the junta seized power 2 years before the tournament, FIFA faced a decision that would define how football's governing body related to political violence for decades. FIFA chose to proceed. The decision that made everything possible. FIFA President João Havelange took the position that football and politics must remain separate. Sport should not punish ordinary citizens for their government's actions. The World Cup belonged to the Argentine people. These arguments were not entirely without merit in isolation. The problem was the context. FIFA was not making a theoretical judgment about sport and politics. FIFA was deciding whether the world's most prestigious sporting event should provide international legitimacy to a regime that was at that exact moment operating secret detention centers and systematically murdering its own citizens. The Escuela de Mecánica de la Armada, ESMA, was one of the most active clandestine detention centers in Buenos Aires throughout the tournament. Prisoners were held, tortured, and killed there during the same weeks that football fans from around the world filled Argentina's stadiums. ESMA was located less than 5 kilometers from the River Plate Stadium where several World Cup matches were played. The crowd noise reached the cells. How the junta used football as a weapon. The military junta understood from the beginning that hosting the World Cup was not a sporting achievement. It was a political survival strategy of the first order. Argentina in 1978 was internationally isolated. The regime's human rights abuses were being documented by Amnesty International and reported internationally. The Carter administration was applying human rights pressure. European governments were receiving testimony from Argentine exiles describing the scale of disappearances. A successful World Cup served the junta's interests simultaneously on multiple fronts. It demonstrated to the international community that Argentina was a stable, modern nation capable of organizing a global event. It created a propaganda narrative of national unity that directly contradicted the accounts of human rights organizations. It generated positive international attention that no amount of diplomatic spending could have purchased. General Videla appeared at matches. Junta officials sat in the stands for the cameras. Argentina's military government presented itself to the watching world through the visual language of sporting hospitality and national celebration. The strategy worked with a precision that should disturb everyone who watched those images and felt only sporting excitement. The match that has never been fully explained. Argentina's path to the final contained a moment generating controversy and unanswered questions for over 4 decades. Argentina's final group match was against Peru. Argentina needed to win by at least 4 goals to overtake Brazil on goal difference and reach the final. Brazil had already played their final match and waited. Argentina won 6-0. The circumstances have been the subject of serious investigative journalism for decades. Allegations included claims that the Argentine junta transferred grain shipments to Peru, that financial payments were made to Peruvian officials, and that Argentine-born Peruvian goalkeeper Ramon Quiroga performed inconsistently with his established abilities. No definitive legal proof of match fixing has ever been established in court. What has been established is that multiple Peruvian officials made public statements over subsequent decades claiming political and economic pressure was applied by the Argentine government. A former Peruvian minister stated in the 1990s that Argentina's central bank released $35 million in credits to Peru around the time of the match. The 6-0 scoreline sent Argentina to the final. Argentina won the World Cup. The junta celebrated with a ferocity that had nothing to do with sport and everything to do with political survival. The mothers who refused to disappear. While the World Cup was being played, a group of women were doing something requiring more courage than anything happening on any football pitch in Argentina. The mothers of the Plaza de Mayo had begun their weekly silent protests in April 1977, a year before the tournament. These were women whose children had been disappeared by the regime. They walked in circles wearing white headscarves, holding photographs of their missing sons and daughters, demanding information the regime refused to provide. During the World Cup, with international journalists present in Buenos Aires for the first time in significant numbers, the mothers continued walking. Some journalists found them. Some stories reached foreign audiences. The contrast between stadium celebrations and silent women holding photographs in the square was documented despite the regime's intense efforts to control the media narrative. The mothers of the Plaza de Mayo became one of the most important human rights movements in Latin American history. They never stopped walking. The regime that tried to silence them using football's greatest prize as cover collapsed in 1983 following military defeat in the Falklands War. Videla was tried and convicted of crimes against humanity. He died in prison in 2013. What FIFA has never properly answered. FIFA's decision to proceed with the 1978 World Cup has never been subject to formal institutional reckoning. No official inquiry has examined the decision-making process. No formal acknowledgement has been made of the role the tournament played in providing propaganda legitimacy to a regime committing crimes against humanity. The 1978 World Cup sits in FIFA's official history as a sporting event. Argentina's victory is recorded. The goals are documented. The trophy was presented in the conventional manner. What is not recorded is the detention center 5 kilometers from the River Plate Stadium. The prisoners who heard the crowd noise from their cells. The 30,000 people disappeared by the government FIFA chose to honor with the world's most prestigious sporting competition. That accounting has never come. It has never seriously been demanded by football's governing structures. And the people who made the decision to proceed in 1978 were never required to justify it to the people who paid the price for it. The ending you cannot unknow. Argentina won the 1978 World Cup. The trophy was lifted. The crowd celebrated with genuine joy because football does that to people regardless of context. General Videla shook hands with Mario Kempes and the cameras recorded a moment of sporting triumph broadcast around the world. In the detention centers, the prisoners heard the celebrations. Some of them were still alive. Football gave the junta exactly what it needed. The junta gave football exactly what it wanted. A successful tournament. Full stadiums. A champion crowned. The people who paid the real price for that arrangement were never asked whether the trade was worth it. They were never asked anything again. Subscribe now, because the true cost of football's greatest moments is sometimes paid by people who never got to watch the game.